Good afternoon and welcome to our Fellows Public Talk series. I'm Claudia Rizzini, the Executive Director of the Fellowship Program at the Harvard-Radcliffe Institute. It is my pleasure to introduce Diana Dabby, our Lillian, Gollay, Knafel Fellow. Some of history's most celebrated artists drew inspiration from their deep curiosity about the natural world and emerging sciences, blending artistic insights with an inventive spirit. Art informs science, science informs art, and humanity exists at the intersection of it all to create. This is the guiding philosophy of Diana Dabby, a classically trained pianist turned electrical engineer, and the reality she inhabits every day. Diana's patents and theoretical work in mashup technology and chaos mapping stem from approaching engineering problems with a working artist's rigor and imagination. At her home institution, Olin College of Engineering, Diana imparts her unique perspective to students in and out of the classroom. As she leads Olin's conductorless orchestra, she is showing a new generation of engineers how to collaborate with one another and listen to their intuition. Artistic skills, she hopes, will continue to flourish outside the rehearsal room. Duality also sits at the heart of Diana's compositions, including her variation concerts. Cutting-edge, focused audio technology and live piano create site-specific performances that vary depending on where you sit. What one audience member hears on the right side of the hall will be different from what another hears on the left. Diana elevates this feat of engineering and acoustics into art that reflects the reality of our daily lives. There are often multiple sides to the same story, and these variation concerts allow both perspectives to exist simultaneously. Diana's talk will include a brief demonstration of a variation concert. The Q&A portion of the public talk today will be moderated by Anne M. Robertson, Radcliffe Fellow and Professor of Mechanical Engineering and Material Science at the University of Pittsburgh. And now please join me in welcoming Diana Dabby.
I'm delighted to be here today with all of you. And Claudia, thank you very much for such a poetic introduction. I'm also very excited to present to you my Radcliffe project. I want to tell my fellow fellows that actually you have been very inspiring to me with your own talks and your own research and your friendship. I also would like to cite the fabulous staff of the Harvard-Radcliffe Institute. They just have so much knowledge and ability to do and create on their own. It's been such a pleasure being here. So, my Radcliffe project actually has 3 parts. And the first part I'll be presenting to you today is musical variation engines. And the second part is a book project. The third part is a variation concert that you will actually hear live today. Now, all of these parts are coming out of and stemming from my work with chaos science, signal processing, acoustics, and music. So I think what I'll do is just go right to the first project. So this first project is going to be musical variation engines. And we have 2 engines, a MIDI variation engine and an audio variation engine. Now you might be thinking, and making a connection. Okay, I understand signal processing and acoustics and music might have something to do and relate to musical variation, but chaos science, really? You know, is chaos science in there? And so I think I better unpack that a little bit for you. Chaos, that word chaos or chaotic, is actually referring to the science of chaos. And it's not basically the state of our lives or the world we live in, it's really a science. And chaos science actually manifests itself in nature. It is often associated with turbulence. Turbulence in the atmosphere, turbulence in water. And you would think such turbulence would be random, but it actually can be modeled by systems of equations. And one such system of equations is the Lorentz equations. These are 3 first-order nonlinear differential equations with 3 parameters. When sigma is set to 10, B is set to 8/3, and R equals 28, the Lorentz system is set to enter its chaotic regime. And once in its chaotic regime, solutions to the Lorentz system have a distinguishing property. They are said to be extremely sensitive to initial conditions. What does this mean? So let's take a listen to what it means. Right here is actually a solution to the Lorentz system. And you can see it starts in the lower right, and it actually ends somewhere in that left-hand lobe. Now, I could start another solution very close by and let it run in the simulation, but it might end up on that upper right lobe and get to that upper right lobe by a different path. But remarkably, all the solutions to the Lorentz equations will look something like this portrait. So there are similarities and there are differences, because those solutions will look like this, but they will get to look like this by traversing different paths. So this idea of similarities and differences has resonance with musical variation. Clearly, too much similarity is going to deflate musical interest, and too much difference is going to obliterate any connection between the original piece and the variation. So, we probably should get right to musical examples so that you have a sense of, okay, what is going on here? So let's get right to musical examples. I'm going to take a prelude by Gershwin. It's for piano, and I'll take the first thematic section. It's going to be the original, and I'm going to play this for you. And now we'll hear a variation. Now, these variations can be very close to the original piece. They can mutate almost beyond recognition and achieve degrees of variability in between these extremes. So now you'll listen to a variation that actually keeps a little bit more of the original in the beginning, but then cascades elsewhere. might be wondering how this works, and over the years, I have devised many chaotic mappings. We have some very unfriendly ways of explaining what this is all about. We also have a more friendly diagram, which actually is how I first conceived of the first chaotic mapping that I devised. And so I'll explain it to you more in an intuitive manner according to this diagram. I'm going to start with a hypothetical solution to the Lorentz system, and it's referenced by the bold curve there called the reference trajectory. Trajectory is just another name for a solution. And I'm going to sample that trajectory, and you see the sample points there. And what you also see is you have the notes of an original piece piggybacked onto those samples of that reference solution. And then I drop those notes onto the x-axis, and I transform it into a pitch axis. The next step is to actually launch another chaotic trajectory, and it's represented there by the lighter curve, the new trajectory. I sample it as well. And then I drop those samples onto what is now a pitch axis, and the samples actually trigger notes to comprise the variation. So for example, the first sample comes down, the x value is x prime 1, and it triggers C1 on that pitch axis. And the second sample comes down, represented by x prime 2, and it triggers E2, a musical note. And then the third sample comes down, and it triggers E8. However, that is a change, because the original piece had G there, the G3, but instead we're getting E8. And in this way, you can get a musical variation. Like I said, this is the very first chaotic mapping that I designed, and there have been many more since then. Now, it's very important that a composer using this technique listen for the far-reaching implications of the variation on different structural levels, and at least reason that it is self-consistent with what they have imagined for their style, their particular style. And so I wrote that out here for people to take in. Now, up to this point, we've been hearing piano variations. But what about multi-track MIDI variations? All right, so we're going to go to more extensive tracks within a MIDI file. And I selected Viva la Vida by Coldplay. Let's listen to just a little bit of the original. This is a MIDI variation engine that we're going to apply to this, but here's the original. Here is a Cantaverio variation. And Cantaverio, by the way, is the name that I've given to my musical variations project. So here is a Cantaverio variation of what you just heard. And if we have time later, I can always play this for you. We can also transform MP3s. Okay, by the way, I'm using older songs to increase the likelihood that you have heard these songs and you recognize them. So let's take two highly contrasting songs. For example, Evacuate the Dance Floor by Cascada and Set Fire to the Rain by Adele. So let's hear a little bit of the original of each. Okay, here comes Adele. All right, and now a mashup.
Give me some more. Watch me getting physical, out of control. There's people watching me. I never miss a beat. Still the night, kill the lights, feel it under your skin.
All right, so you've heard now some mashups, and you might be wondering, well, what does mashup have to do with musical variation? It's a form of musical variation. And in fact, the last variation of Bach's, J.S. Bach's Goldberg variations, is actually a mashup. He and his family made them also for fun. So there's a long history of mashups and musical variation. We have now heard examples of the MIDI variation engine and also the audio variation engine. So let's go to part 2 of my Radcliffe project. It's a book project. And this is a book about artists whose knowledge and ability in science infuse their artistic output. And the working title is Singular Voices, Dual Lives, Nabokov, Leonardo, Bach, Borodin. And in order, there they are. And so let's take a few moments on each of these individuals. They've inspired me greatly. So we have Vladimir Nabokov. He's a writer and lepidopterist. So it's very well known that Nabokov's lifelong love affair with Lepidoptera actually contributed to an inimitable voice in his writing. And what is Lepidoptera? It's the order of insects comprising butterflies and moths. And Nabokov has another side to him that it's not actually as well known, and that is that his work on tropical lycinid butterflies, which comprise 25% of the world's butterfly population, is actually still standing as research, the go-to research on those tropical lycinid butterflies, one of which you see here, Lucas's blue. Now, many of you have probably read his autobiography, Speak Memory. It's filled with Lepidoptera. His greatest, what he considered his greatest Russian novel, The Gift, also has a huge chapter on butterflies and how they're being taken in by the protagonist. Then we also have his two great English novels, his two greatest English novels. He considered Pale-Fire and Lolita, so definitely Lolita's here. And I could spend hours talking about this, but of course, we have just a few minutes here. I'll move on then to Leonardo, artist, scientist, and engineer. So for Leonardo, art fueled his science, science fueled his art. And he studied anatomy for art's sake. But then it blossomed into something else. And it actually became, and he created, the first engineering study of the human body. Now, this was really lonely, gruesome work, which you can read here on the slide. What's not as well known about Leonardo is that he opened the door to a new field, the new field of comparative anatomy, which means basically, and how he did this, you can see it in his drawings, he's comparing the hind limb of a horse to the leg of a man. So we'll move on now to Bach. Bach has been cited for his minute knowledge of the construction of the organ. Now, why would this even be significant? Certainly we know him as a composer. We know him as a great organist. But I've got two organs up here. Why? Because the organ was the mechanical marvel of his era. And he was regarded by his contemporaries as the expert, the organ expert, and also highly regarded for his knowledge of the musical sciences, which his contemporaries claim gave his work an inimitable stamp. And finally, we come to Alexander Borodin, chemist and composer. Borodin really kept his two professional sides separate. But in his opera, Prince Igor, he did a kind of musical chemistry when he combined Arabic folk songs with basically Russian folk songs. Many Russian composers have taken Russian folk songs, but here is Borodin also introducing Arabic music into his Prince Igor. And for those of you who know Kismet, the Broadway show that was won Tony Awards, it's based mostly on the music found in Prince Igor, as well as other pieces by Borodin. And you'll probably recall Strangers in Paradise, very famous song, straight from Borodin. In any case, as a scientist, he's credited with the discovery of aldehyde resins, basically, that are used in paints and glues and other types of materials. So we now come to part 3 of this Radcliffe project, and I'm, together with my colleague, Kevin Brown, we're going to present for you a variation concert. You'll be hearing it live today. And what happens in a variation concert? Where you sit will determine which version of a soundscape you hear during this piece. I've written a new piece. The piece is titled Earth, Fire, Water, and it's for live piano, which you'll hear, and also for a left-hand side soundscape, and a right-hand side soundscape. The thing is, you hear on the left-hand side will hear shadow at times of the right-hand side on purpose, and vice versa. However, most of the time, you are just going to be hearing the soundscape that I made for you all, and on this side, the soundscape that I made for each of you. And Kevin Brown is the president and chief engineer of Brown Innovations. He invented this technology, this sound focusing technology, and he's here to tell you a little bit about it. Thank you, Kevin.
So I'm here just to tell you about the speakers. So you'll notice that you're between two sets of speakers on each side. And these speakers are a little unusual. Most conventional speakers, they emit a spherical wave. These are line-arranged horns, and they use some DSP, but what they create is a planar wave, or actually a cylindrical wave that comes from each of these speakers. You mostly will hear the sound that they are producing. You may hear a little bit of the sound coming from reflections and things like that from the other side during the piece. I wanted to just tell you a little history between Diana and I. I've known her almost 40 years. I was at MIT in the EE department, and I heard the buzz that this concert pianist was coming to the electrical engineering department. And I was lucky enough to have her in my class, my acoustics class. She was very enthusiastic. And at the end of that year, she wanted to become a teaching assistant as well. And is it possible you can show it? So here's the teaching staff at the time. That's Professor Amar Bose up there, and there's Diana and myself over on the other, on the right side. It was wonderful to work with her in the acoustics class, and I've continued being close friends with her, and we've done several projects like this where she's written a piece of music. But in the past, she had other pianists play the piece that she wrote. And over these 40 years, it's been a very rare occurrence that I actually get to hear Diana play, so this is a very special event today. I think if I can get some of these recording things started, and we can all be very quiet during these recordings, that would be appreciated. Thank you very much, and I'll be around after for questions.
background in insurance. We used to take classes in terms of fire prevention and what happens in a fire. And there's a thing called a firestorm, which people don't understand. The fire makes its own weather. Early in the fire, I was driving towards the east side where much of the devastation was. And I looked up towards the foothills and I saw this tall palm tree. And all of a sudden an ember came and it attacked the trunk of the tree at about 50 feet, 60 feet high. And within moments, it turned from a little ember to a bright flame. And 10 seconds later, it just exploded the embers from that tree and went out in multiple different directions. And I'm not talking about small embers. I'm talking about embers the size of, 3 and 4 inches. And then the 80 to 90 mile an hour winds, I don't know how you stop that. There could have been a fire engine on every street corner, and I'm not sure how they would have stopped it. I mean, this is unprecedented. 90 mile per hour and 100 mile per hour winds. How do you stop that?
Shift in the wind changed everything. So I was down low, able to look back at them, and able to look at the fire too at the same time.
They could see it as well.
Yes, sir. And they said, if you need to get out of there, go ahead and get out of there. We can see what's going on. We want you to be safe too.
But the fire was incredibly intense. Flames 50 feet long. Smoke, radios were lost.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
It's truly an honor to be the moderator for your presentation. That was astonishing.
Thank you.
And your work is just so profoundly moving and creative and intellectually stimulating all at the same time. And
Thank you.
it's remarkable. I'd like to start with a question about your music variation engine. As an engineer, someone who studied fluid mechanics, I'm just intrigued by how you're harnessing chaos to create something. So as you mentioned, we can see chaos in fluid mechanics in the form of turbulence. And so I'm well aware of the Navier-Stokes equations and how they can, in the right conditions, move from laminar flow to transition into turbulence. And how you described how in Lorentz equation, similarly, it becomes chaotic and dependent on the initial conditions. Can you elaborate a little bit more about this process of harnessing chaos for music, and in particular, this idea that some things that could be created might be too far from, as you described, the artist once. And I don't know if it's something that you can describe as eloquently as you did before in a way that's intuitive for the audience. But is there something in your algorithm that sort of keeps the music flowing in the direction, or is this part of the creative process to select the music afterwards?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I mentioned earlier, there have been several chaotic mappings that I've created over the years, and they all do different things. Ironically, it's that sensitive dependence condition that how to tame that became a big thing. Because when I was a graduate student, no one wanted chaos in what they were designing. I mean, people wanted to get rid of that.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be flying a plane and all of a sudden, you know, oh, we're in our chaotic regime. We have a problem. But what I did was, first of all, on the very first chaotic mapping, I used the notes of the original piece. And that gave a kind of, you know, at least you were starting from a set of notes that was in the original piece. However, I got bolder as time went on, and I wanted notes outside of those of the original piece, and certainly in those Gershwin variations, you heard that, and also in the other examples I played for you. So I started to basically lasso other types of variation techniques, and I would have the chaotic mapping basically interact with those other variation techniques, and then things became so much richer, and one thing led to another. It's just that creative process, you know, once it starts, it's kind of hard to shut down. And so I just stayed open to it.
Yeah.
Okay, you want me to do this? Okay, I'll do this now. So I just listened to that a lot, and it's very intuitive. Yeah.
Thank you. I understand that you invented this process of let's say, harnessing chaos with music during your doctoral work. We saw a picture of you up there while you were a PhD student in electrical engineering department and computer science department in MIT. And that followed this pivotal moment when you, as a concert pianist, came across this journal of music of the future. And that inspired you to, from my understanding, to start. You looked a little bit at the authors there and saw that they were STEM-type people, physicists and mathematicians and engineers, and were avid musicians in creating something. And somehow you, as a concert pianist, not being trained in engineering, could have a vision at that moment and say, I think I can add something even beyond this if I study engineering and then pursuing a little bit more, decide in electrical engineering. And I'm just so impressed, and particularly seeing the picture of you up there in your laboratory, that you, as a younger Diana Dabby, could say to yourself, I have this vision, and that somehow that brought you through all the usual challenges of PhD work and pursuing something in a male-dominated field, and one that perhaps wasn't as used to having music, kind of traditional electronic. So I'm just so impressed that if you could share with us a little bit about what inside of you, what that younger Diana, that perhaps is still fueling you today. Could you just elaborate a little bit on who you were then and how that happened?
Well, people did think I was crazy. I have to say that. But other people at MIT said, leave her alone. Just let her go. Let her do what she's going to do. And I'm grateful to them. There were a lot of them. And they made such a difference in my life. And, they gave me a long rope. And that long rope is critical, I believe, for creativity. My home institution, Olin College of Engineering, pervasive at Olin. Everyone has that long rope. And I would really encourage so many universities to do that for their faculty and even and others, their students, their staff. Give them a long rope. They won't hang themselves. They're going to be so invested in what they're doing, and it'll make a very happy community, that's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Leverage people's abilities more
Yes,
fully.
yes.
Going to your variation concert that you just performed, I don't know, speaking for myself, that was an entirely new experience, and I'm so grateful to be able to listen to that. And can you elaborate a little bit on the creative process and the development of which element emerged first? Was it the music that you composed? Was it the two soundscapes? How did you iteratively move these forward? Where did the soundscapes come from? And can you elaborate a little bit on that whole process of creativity?
Yes, of course. Yes. Well, a dear friend of mine, I was going to start with, experimenting with sound and everything. And she said to me, don't you think you better write that piano part first? And I thought, oh gosh, yes, I think you're right. I should just, start with that piano part, get that down. For one thing, I knew I was going to have to learn it. And so, yes, the sooner you get the music to the performer, the better. So piano part came first, and then, but as I was truly earth and fire and water really inspired that piano part, just in a very deep emotional level for a lot of reasons. And when it came time to doing the soundscapes, I did the left-hand side first. And I just went online. Orally, I knew what I wanted, and I just had to find it, basically. And I'm so grateful to the United States Forest Service for putting those recordings online, quite a few. The maple fires were from them and others. I'm so grateful to them for the Everglades, a thunderstorm in the Everglades. I grew up in Miami. Those thunderstorms, they're not like the Northeast thunderstorms. Those are thunderstorms, And so then there was also National Geographic. They had sounds, nature sounds. They were fabulous. And Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech actually recorded the Japanese earthquake. And they sped up the recording so that we as humans could actually hear this. And it really affected me. So, Georgia Tech, thank you. And yes, there were so many good people out there that had done good work and good recordings, and they put it out for everyone, to listen to and use as they would like to. And I was very fortunate, yeah.
I'd like to encourage the audience to post more questions. And then I'd also like to move on. So as you mentioned, nature, obviously in the title, in the music, in the soundscapes, plays a very important center stage in your performance piece here. Can you elaborate on a couple things? One is how nature became an important part of your own life to drive such a creative piece, and also your creative process of having the music kind of represent those aspects of nature that interplay with the soundscapes during your performance.
Yeah, I have to say, really the bulk of my life, especially my life in New York, I was in love with buildings. I wouldn't think of hugging a tree. I would think of hugging a building. I was a very city girl, just total city girl. And when I got to Boston, I thought I was in the country. And so I started listening more, I started hearing more, I started feeling more for what was around us here. And this is amazing, amazing part of the country. And that started to affect me. Clearly, what was going on with our earth and with the people that were suffering and losing because of certain things happening with our environment really got under my skin. And I started to feel for Earth as something that was, she needs to be protected and appreciated. And so that really took over me. This is a more recent development, like I said, it was kind of a trajectory gradually to something like that.
Yes, and can you speak a little bit to how you used the music aspect of the composition to interplay with the soundscapes?
Well, every time I play that piano part with the audio, it's always different. And it makes it very exciting, actually. So at one part, Earth has two appearances. She starts off, it starts with Earth, then it goes to fire, then it goes to water, and you probably could kind of hear this. And then then I have a soul song, and that's a very personal soul song. And then comes Earth Prime, Earth again. But this time, Earth is very quiet and flowing and a little sad. But what did I put against it and what did I want against it? I wanted something totally the opposite. So at the suggestion of a dear friend, I put a volcano, the sound of a volcano. And it was in Iceland. And that just, I took the part where the lava is flowing. So you have that movement, you know, and then my part was just very fluid and very placid. And I was mixing meters a lot, but I was not changing the essential eighth note rhythm. I just wanted it to evolve. And that was a very conscious. You know, I think a lot of this went on the feel that I had for what the piano I'd be playing there, and then what am I hearing against that? And certainly frequency ranges had a lot to do with it. I'm hearing frequencies, and I often mixed, for example, for one of the fires, which each side heard, I actually mixed 3 different maple forest fires, and just put them all together, and delayed their entrances, and just so that the audience would, oh, here's something, you know, I didn't hear before. So it would be, your ears would be arrested on many levels. I was hoping for that.
Yeah. I wish we could continue this conversation longer. We're sort of out of time now, but I think we'll all have, fortunately, as fellow fellows and staff, will have a chance to talk with you some more. So I'd just like to end now and say thank you, Diana. I think I'm speaking for all of us when I say thank you for taking us into your world, the way you look at the world, and your ability to create like this. This was really just profound for us. And before finalizing things, I'd just like to say that I've been asked to make a few announcements. We'll have the opportunity to explore the intersection of art and science tomorrow evening, again at 7 p.m. in the Radcliffe Institute during the kickoff event of Gender and AI Conference. The artistic expression will take center stage as we delve into how art, gender, and AI shape and inform one another. This event is free and open to the public. You can attend in person or online, so please visit the Radcliffe's website, radcliffe.harvard.edu, for further information. And I'd also like to thank the audience, but most of all, to thank you, Diana. This was just amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't have had a better person. Thank you. Very nice. Yeah.